Greetings, I'm Masindi Managa, and even though I've never been bullied, I know some people who have. As a poet knowing how to play with words, I've mastered the talent of walking a mile in someone else's shoes, which is basically known as empathy. You don't have to go through it to speak up. Tandile Kontro said, according to the anti-bullying campaign, roughly 57% of South African people have been bullied at some time during their high school career. Considering that 2.2 million of South African population are school-going children, the rate of bullying is high. Maybe because the number of victims are high, people think it's an acceptable problem. I'm going to recite a poem I wrote in 2020 titled, Who Saved Me? I knew bullying existed. I just never would have thought I'd be on the receiving end. When it started, I thought about cutting. I tried it once and I got hooked. It was pain for pain. I had to stand all the anguish. My hair would get pulled. I was thrown against walls, punched in my guts. I was called names, ugly, fat, pathetic, a loser. I'm nothing. No one likes me. I'm just a worthless, ugly, fat, and a pathetic person. I got swamped by such thoughts, taking my life looked appealing. It'll make people happier. In 2020, I wrote this poem and thought I didn't need to share it because the bullying issue was well addressed and put to rest. Nothing else could possibly be said about it. Nothing more could be added. Not to our progressive and vocal generation that criticizes any injustices, right? You can imagine my surprise when a year later, in 2021, I found out that Rufuno Mavunga lost her life to bullycide. Rufuno Mavunga's story went viral when people saw how there were bystanders taking videos and encouraging a bully. Following the viral video was information on her death as a result to suicide. According to Stephen King, the second leading cause of death of 15 to 24-year-olds is suicide. There are testimonies of people who are bullied and thought it was their fault. There are testimonies of people who are bullied and stopped going to school, become suicidal. And even amid this tragedy, the most tragic outcome is bullycide, bullying which leads to suicide. Someone's child, a person with potential, feelings and dreams, was taunted by someone else to the point of death. And that is an injustice. Why is it we've heard all we can possibly hear about bullying and how bullies are hurt people who hurt others and how bullying is more than just a physical thing? Why is it the case that it is so much of a problem that society and even the government is willing to acknowledge it by having an aloe chapter on it, yet in its severity remains complacent to enacting any change around it? As a learner, I've realized that change around circumstances comes from understanding those circumstances and the change you want to see and assessing how to execute it. We know that bullying is a problem, but what happens when we normalize behaviors common to bullying as acceptable? We get a problem that seems well addressed, but is not. Education in this instance, important. It can differentiate between what is and what is not. Some people think that bullying is only physical and that taunting is not. Some people don't even understand that bullying could be happening to them. Your bullies can often be your friends, your siblings, or even your parents. There's comic teasing where we all laugh and even indulge in making fun of ourselves. Then there's the detrimental, traumatizing, and life-altering shift. Some people also have such little knowledge on bullying that they think bullying is a conflict. It is not. In a conflict, both parties have negotiating powers. In a bullying situation, the power of the bullied is diminished so much so a bully can say, you shouldn't be here, and you consider and plan to act on it. There are also instances where there's more than one type of bullying occurring. It can be psychological or physical. Essentially, there's a large amount of information that is not available in our education, that not only do we notice bullying when it is too late, sometimes we notice it and can't act on it because we don't have the knowledge and language and therefore the power to address it. My trust is in an educational curriculum geared solely towards educating and enlightening all learners under the Department of Basic Education with knowledge and a skill base that explains bullying in order to prevent it. Although ignorance is not an excuse, often when unaddressed, it becomes a sense and source of normalcy of unjust and unacceptable behaviors. I noted this in my own little siblings when I asked them what bullying was. They said it is when people take away your things, hit you, and give you bruises. Of course, that's how it's depicted to most children, as this violence that only manifests itself physically and not so much verbally or psychologically. When I asked my little siblings if they've ever teased a person. They said yes, and that they do tease people countless times. The takeaway from that is that there is normalcy around teasing, so long as a person cannot go home and physically produce scars or bruises to indicate they were bullied. That is a very scary place to be in our education, where our understanding of problems is solely based on the byproducts of those problems, such as bruises, or worse yet, bully side. Schools are not doing enough to rectify the existing curriculum on the validity of feeling bullied without being physically pushed. The reality of how taunting and teasing is a characteristic of bullying. The very scary realization that mental health and self-esteem is so greatly tied to educational performance that the point at which a learner is bullied first reproduces itself in their marks caused by their behaviors. The most difficult conversation in education, however, is finding out that we ourselves are or have been bullies before. We need a formal environment that makes it a safe space for us to unlearn behaviors we had normalized as acceptable, when in reality they are unjust and problematic. It starts with a generation of children that understands bullying as more than just a physical concept. The last time I did anything about bullying was in primary. The effort was minor. The results it yielded, negligible, if in fact there is still bullying. We have reached a tipping point in society and in the value of our education system that we need to readdress things we had formerly considered addressed because clearly they were not well addressed. One life lost to bullycide is one life too many, especially when we claim to know about bullying, injustice, and the importance of education. We have had the chat. Perhaps now we need the change. Thank you.